Welcome back to my channel for my weekly human design transit report. Today is Monday, March 7th, and the current transit that we're in right now, I talked about a lot last week. We're only here just for today, and then we change tomorrow. So if you want to find out about what's going on right today, go and watch last week's transit report, and you'll get all the details there. So tomorrow is March 8th, and the sun is going to move into the gate 22, and the earth is going to move into the gate 47. And we will dive into detail about those two gates in just a minute. But first, I want to acknowledge that today is International Women's Day. I first learned about International Women's Day when I was in graduate school because I had a good friend who was Latina, and she knew very well about International Women's Day because it was big in Latin America. I found this to be very interesting because I grew up with my mom becoming a feminist when I was a teenager, and I never knew about International Women's Day before. Fascinating, right? So it's a big international celebration for women, and the UN has a whole program about it. I want to just read you this piece here that I took off of their website. This International Women's Day, March 8th, join UN women and the world in coming together under the theme Gender Equity Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow, a call for climate action for women by women. If you've been following me for a while, you know that climate change is something that I talk about with some regularity, and it's part of our focus inside of feminine sovereignty because climate change has to do with our connection to the natural world, which is part of pillar number 3 and also pillar number 8. And so we're looking at how do we create a more equitable world that is more sustainable for all of us. So according to the UN, with the latest data, we now understand the vital link between gender, social equity, and climate change, and recognize that without gender equality today, a sustainable future and equal future remains out of reach. Women and girls experience the greatest impacts of the climate crisis as it amplifies existing gender inequities and puts women's lives and livelihoods at risk. Across the world, women depend on, yet have less access to natural resources and often bear a disproportionate responsibility for securing food, water, and fuel. I want to just pause here and say, if you are a woman in the United States, this is something that it's important for us to know about because we may not be so aware of that because a lot of what they're talking about is people who are outside of the US and outside of the Western world, or who are among marginalized populations inside of the United States and inside of the Western world. So those of us who, have race privilege, economic, educational privilege, we need to be paying attention to what is happening for our sisters who don't have the level of privilege that we do, whether that's in the country that we live in or around the world. So to continue, as women and girls bear the burden of climate impacts, they are also essential to leading and driving change in climate adaptation, mitigation, and solutions. Without the inclusion of half the world's population, it's unlikely that solutions for a sustainable planet and gender equal world tomorrow will be realized. Now, they have a great little video. I'm going to put the link to that down in the description, so you can go ahead and watch it. You can check out the different kinds of activities that are going on and how you can support this, how you can get involved, and just opening your eyes up, on March 7th, that we are living in a world that it does not have gender parity for sure, and that there are women all around the world who are bearing a disproportionate burden that is something that we're really all responsible for. Even before we dive into where the sun and the earth are today, I want to point out, in the spirit of International Women's Day, that the 4130 is being lit up by Mercury that's in the 30 and Venus that's in the 41. Now, the 4130 is a very powerful channel. It's the only channel that is defined right now that's going between the root and the emotional solar plexus. The 40, which begins the human design new year, is the gate of fantasy or imagination. And the 30 is the gate of passion. Now, this is energy that is supporting us in our imaginations and then giving us the passion, or the clinging fire, as it's called in the I Ching, to be able to carry through the imaginations that we have into fruition. And so for us, as we are looking at the situation for women around the world, as we're looking at the unequal burden that people are sharing around the world for climate change, and the responsibility that all of us have to be participating in changing that reality, we can be leaning in through to the power that we have right now of imagination that that Venus is making available to us. She's really showing us that we can open up our imaginations, and Venus is our divine feminine energy. It has to do with value. It has to do with money. It has to do with beauty. There's so much that Venus is about, and she is inspiring our creativity. This is in the sensing circuit. And it is inviting us to tap into that really powerful right-brained creative energy to imagine a new future, and then to supercharge that with the energy of the gate 30. And Mercury is also here lighting up the 30, giving us the passion to be able to talk about these things as well. So as we go forward, starting on the 8th for the next 6 days, we have the energy to be speaking up about what we're passionate about, what we have as far as our imagination for the world that we know is possible, that we can feel pulling us forward into the future, that we also want to give some legs to. That's part of what root energy does, is it helps us ground into ordinary reality, these imagination that we have for what's truly possible. All right, so the Earth is moving into the gate 47. And the gate 47 in traditional human design is known as realization, and in quantum human design is known as mindset. Now you'll see here it's on the Ajna Center, and it is also in the sensing circuit, just as that 4130 I was mentioning a moment ago is also in the sensing circuit. Last week, the Earth was in the gate 64, which is the mate of the gate 67. So basically the Earth has moved from the head in the 64 down into the Ajna in the same circuit. And so we're still receiving information, divine transference, through that head Ajna channel. And it's the job of the 47 to be receiving that divine transference, that energy that's coming from superconsciousness through the head, through the sensing circuit, and to be able to go, what's that about? Now let's talk about the Ajna for a minute, because the Ajna in human design is very different than the Ajna in the yoga traditions. And sometimes people get those mixed up. So in human design, the Ajna is more like the thinking brain. It is the place for data storage, it's for analysis, it's more rational. And so the 47, even though it's in the sensing circuit, there's a little bit of a creative tension going on here between the sensing circuit, which is right-brained and creative and intuitive and abstract and spatial and all of that. But then the Ajna is more rational and more analytical, and we qualities that we associate more with the left brain. That 47 is going to be receiving that energy, and our invitation here is to stay open, to have a mindset that is not locked down and rigid and confining, which can happen in the Ajna, because the Ajna is kind of known as being stubborn and pig-headed and single focus. But instead of that is to remain more open, so that we can actually receive the inspirations and the insights that are coming in from superconsciousness through that channel, and to allow the 47 to kind of receive them and then store them in the Ajna. And this can also be fueling what we're seeing down in that 4130 down at the bottom of the chart, where Mercury and Venus are also working in that sensing circuit. So we want to be able to ground ourselves in a kind of expansive, receptive, open, inspired mindset, and to allow that to help us to imagine new futures and to pour our passion into the new futures that include sustainability and gender equity for women in countries and locations all around the world. The sun is moving into the gate 22, which is known as openness in traditional human design, or surrender in quantum human design. And it is on the emotional solar plexus. We are continuing our journey around the emotional solar plexus we've been in. We had a little respite in the last transit, but really for many weeks now, we've been going through the different gates of the emotional solar plexus. So this is an emotional energy, and it is in the knowing circuit. So the knowing circuit is kind of a sister to the sensing circuit in the sense that it is non-rational, non-linear, non-logical, and so on. It's definitely plugged into super consciousness. And so it is bringing through really breakthrough out of the box ideas. When I first learned about the 22, I learned about it as the energy that fundraisers have. That there are people who can create an environment that make people want to give, make people want to participate, make people have a bigger perspective about what's possible. And it is emotional. It's like being able to touch people, to be poignant, and also to inspire and to say something new is possible. Would you like to join hands with me and help bring this into being? It does have a quality of grace, and it has a quality of receptivity. And it's interesting that it's been called surrender now in quantum human design. And the surrender, I think, is the surrender to spirit, if you will, or surrender to the flow of life, surrender to the idea that there is a guiding intelligence, the creative intelligence of the universe that is really in charge. And that all we need to do is to be able to tap in and to allow ourselves to be inspired by that so that we can rely on having what we need when we need it. This has been a theme for us through the last couple of transits as well, because we had the gate 55 lit up recently, and the gate 55 is so much about that as well. This deep sense that we are supported, that the universe has our back, that we are not alone, that in fact we're part of a great web of life, and that everything that we need is going to come to us and manifest for us when we need it. So we are surrendering, if you will, to that greater force and inviting it to really support us and to enliven us. I want to emphasize here that surrender does not mean passivity. Okay, that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about being able to kind of lay down the mantle of our ego self, our little self who believes that we're really in charge and thinks that we are so capable and so intelligent and that we can, make everything happen in our lives. We're kind of laying down that mindset, if you will, and we're picking up another mindset that helps us to be more open to a broader reality, and that we can allow ourselves to be supported by that and to work, in fact, in concert with it, that we are constantly co-creating with this larger flow of life, and that we're not ever really acting alone, even if we kind of believe that we are. I think this is a great energy for us to be having as we celebrate International Women's Day and as we look moving forward as to what can be our role in helping to shift climate change, whether that is supporting people who are already doing that, whether that's changes that we're making in our own home. I know that we focus on taking as many actions as we can to help to, lower our carbon footprint, to use less energy, to be looking at how we can be creating more green in the world. There are a variety of ways in which any and all of us can get involved. So I encourage you, as we go forward into this next transit, go and check out what the UN is doing. Say hello to women that you know around the world. Do a little research. Find out what's happening with women in different parts of the world as they are aiming to combat climate change in places where it's really present for them. I know for me, I live in Northern California. We have fire season every year. Fire season is a direct outcome of climate change. It's very real for us here. We haven't had any rain here since the first week of January. It's been 2 months all the way through the winter. So we definitely live in climate change, and we are not so heavily impacted by it because we are in a relatively wealthy country in a relatively wealthy area. And so we have a lot of things available to us. And yet we all need to be paying attention to this. So that's my invitation to you this week, is go out and find out how you can contribute to helping to shift what's happening with climate change. All right. Many blessings. Much love. Bye for now.